Welcome to a new Draw My Life video.
Dean Arnold Corll, also known as Candyman, was a serial killer from the US who, along with two accomplices, kidnapped, tortured, and killed at least 28 young people between 1970 and 1973 in Houston, Texas. He was born on December 24, 1939 in Fort Wayne, Indiana, US. He was the first son of Mary Robinson and Arnold Edwin Corll. His mom was very protective, but not his dad, strict and tough with his two kids. He usually grounded them. Corll was a very shy boy who had a rough time interacting with others, though he always cared about the well-being of other people. His parents argued more and more frequently, so they ended up getting a divorce when he was 7. After this, his mom sold the family house, and after moving several times, they settled in Vidor, a small town in the west of Texas. His mom married again, and with her new husband, she started a candy company in their garage. Dean was really involved in the family business since day one, and he worked day and night after he got out of school every day. There, he was seen as a well-behaved and generous student who used to give candy to his friends. The family business kept growing and growing, so after Dean's graduation, the family decided to move again. The place they chose was Houston Heights, a low-income neighborhood in the city of Houston, where they opened a small store. During his teenage years, Dean never showed any kind of weird behavior. In fact, neighbors would say he was a model boy, kind, who gave candy to the kids in the neighborhood. However, it all changed in August 1964, when he was drafted into the US Army. He soon showed his disdain for the service, and after 10 months he asked for a leave of absence, with the excuse of taking care of the family business. He would be later on named the vice president of the business. When he went back to Houston, he restarted his work in the company, and he moved to an apartment right above the store. It was then that his personality changed drastically. He became irascible and gloomy. With the excuse of the candy, Corll started to spend more and more time with teenagers. In 1967, he became friends with David Brooks, who was 12 years old, one of the kids he gave candy to. The family nucleus of this young boy was totally unstructured, and Corll's attention soon made the kid look up to him as a father figure. Dean's dark instincts sparked in September 1970. Jeffrey Conan, an 18-year-old boy who hitchhiked on the road, became his first victim. Corll picked him up and took him home. On their way there, he gave him some candy, and once they were home, he hit him on the head, leaving him unconscious. After this, he tied him to a chair and tortured him for hours until he finally ended his agony by hitting his head until it was destroyed. Dean was surprised by Brooks in the middle of the slaughter. He managed to blackmail him and keep him silent about it, offering him in exchange a car, a Chevrolet Corvette. The influence of the killer upon the kid was such that he even made a deal with him. He'd give him $200 for each kid he'd bring him. Brooks accepted, becoming automatically his accomplice. His mom's marriage failed again, and the family closed down the candy company. So Corll started on a job as an electrician. His mother moved again to Colorado this time, and even though they talked on the phone regularly, she never came back to visit her son. In 1971, David Brooks introduced Elmer Henley to Dean Corll. He also came from a humble family with financial problems. Dean decided he could be a good accomplice, and he offered him again $200 for each kid he would bring to his apartment. Henley's family was so poor that he accepted the offer without really knowing about Dean's intentions yet. Dean carried out most of his murders during the following 2 years. All his victims were teenagers, younger than 20 years old, who lived in the outskirts of Houston Heights. His modus operandi consisted in attracting his victims to his apartment with the help of his accomplices. After that, he would offer them drugs, and then he would strangle them or shoot them, though torturing them first. Corll became more and more cruel. He'd cut their bodies, he would break their bones with a hammer, or he'd choke them with plastic bags, lengthening the agony of his victims for hours. Once they were killed, he bathed them in lime and covered them with layers of plastic. He'd tie the ends and wrap his victims as if they were a piece of candy, and then finally he would bury them. However, everything went wrong for him in August 8, 1973. Hanley had taken a boy to Corll's house, but he had also invited Rhonda Williams, a friend of his. She was 15 years old. Corll got furious with Hanley for taking a girl inside his house, but he managed to calm him down. The two teenagers kept drinking and taking drugs until they fell unconscious. When they woke up, they found themselves gagged and with their hands tied. Corll threatened Hanley putting a gun on his temple, but the young boy calmed him down again, promising he would participate in the torturing of the other two, so he set him free. Dean offered him a hunting knife and asked him to cut off Rhonda's clothes while he tortured the other boy. But he refused to do so, and tired of these slaughters, he grabbed Corll's gun and threatened him. They both struggled, and finally he shot his head, though the bullet didn't make it all the way through the cranium. He shot other 5 times until the killer collapsed and bled to death. It was Hanley himself that called the police and confessed not only Dean Corll's murder, but also his and David Brooks' participation in the torture and death of more than 20 teenagers. They collaborated with the justice by pointing out the location of several bodies, and they both were sentenced to imprisonment for life. And this was how Dean Corll went down in history as one of the most heartless serial killers of all the ones we know. And also, now our parents' warning finally makes sense. The one that says, "Don't take candy from a stranger."
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, and if you want to see more Draw My Life videos, subscribe to our channel. See you in the next episode!